Professional curiosity in social work practice. How to apply professional curiosity to practice. Welcome to the third presentation about professional curiosity. You will have noticed that this series of presentations has followed the what, why and how model of reflection. This video moves us to how. In this presentation, we'll be considering how to apply professional curiosity to practice. It focuses mainly on social work practice. It is also applicable to other professionals who work in child protection, and many of these issues raised have more universal applicability. Professional curiosity has three stages. These are preceding or anticipatory, being in the zone, and post-events. The first stage is interesting. Most of the time, this is anticipatory. I mean, you can expect to be in a position where you may need to be curious. This could be because of your role, the situation you are facing, or the consequences of your actions. If your role is a social worker undertaking a Section 47 inquiry, you can anticipate to some degree what you're going to be doing. Take some time to reflect on this now. What do you think you'd be doing? How would you prepare for curiosity? We have talked about awareness of indicators. For example, if assessing neglect and home conditions, the practitioner may have prepared by looking at guidance or assessment tools. Both home conditions tool and the graded care profile help identify indicators. Other tools, such as disguise compliance or the significant harm checklist, help you focus on key areas. Situations and consequences are the other anticipatory states. A joint investigation with the police is a situation that brings with it some rules and boundaries that helps you prepare. You'd be thinking about who leads, which role, and what kind of questions need to be asked. Another example would be an unannounced home visit. It has with it the prospect of finding something unexpected and having to react. Another of these categories is consequences. The consequences of your visits can sometimes help frame the types of questions and how you'd be professionally curious. A child discloses at school they have been physically abused by both parents. You visit the child at school. The immediate consequences of the visits will determine whether the child needs to be placed elsewhere temporarily. So roles, situations and consequences shape our anticipation and helps us prepare. In reflective practice, we'd call it reflecting for action. The second stage is being in the zone. This is the moment of curiosity. You have consciously been triggered. You are aware that you are asking questions, digging deeper. When in the zone, you will apply a lot of your resources to understanding what is happening for you. Pay attention to what you are sensing. You may find it useful to think of stepping into this zone of curiosity. It is only temporary, but there are things that you need to do when you are there. And after you've done enough, you step out of that zone. It is over, finished. This post-event stage happens after curiosity. Now ask yourself, so what? What are the implications of anything you have discovered? Do you need to take actions? You won't always have to take actions. Not all curiosity is rewarded with insights and revelations. Sometimes it is enough to decide not to take further action. Curiosity is probing in case there is anything there, and if not, you should move on. So these are the before, during, and after steps. Imagine a shower. It has 3 settings: too cold, too hot, and in between these is that just right temperature. This same framework is useful in professional curiosity. Not curious enough, too curious, and in the middle, curious enough. You can imagine what these represent. Not being curious enough is not asking enough questions, taking things for granted, not digging or probing. Being too curious is when you spend too much time on something, digging too deep, not letting go. Of course, one of the challenges for practitioners is time. So we need to allocate just enough time to do things right. Spending too much time, being too curious, probing too long in matters just uses up your precious time. Curious enough is a middle bit where you have gone far enough, asked enough, but you don't really have enough grounds to go much further. When we work with the police, they often tell us we don't have grounds for that and move on. They may be better than many professionals at doing that and not constantly questioning if they did enough. I am always reminded of investigating online offenders. One of the issues is the seizure of devices, mobile phones and computers. For a lay person, you'd want the police to look every time in case, but they don't do it. They have very specific rules about having grounds. So we hear we don't have grounds. We need to remember that we need to do enough and not too much. There isn't a hard and fast rule about this. My advice to you with professional curiosity is to ask yourself, have I been curious enough? The advice is always be curious, every time, just a little. Be aware that you are stepping into that zone. Stay there as long as you need to, but then move on as soon as you can. If we look at a few examples, we've previously mentioned disguise compliance. Professional curiosity is probably going to be triggered by the things the parents tell you. Communication and listening are important, so we can hear these things if they are present. The skills of collaborative communication and reflective listening are important in building trust. Imagine an example from practice. Both parents have long-term substance misuse problems. They are used to agencies in their lives. They have 2 children. You are undertaking a child protection inquiry. You talk to the parents and they tell you they'll do anything you ask them to do. They describe how helpful you are and that all the previous promises of help haven't worked for the children. They describe unrealistic ambitions about family life in contrast with what you observe at home. They say the children are shy and would want them to be present when they were talking to you. And when you visit the next time, if you give them notice to make sure the children are at home. This short description includes a number of indicators. The most obvious is that their motivation to change appears to be external. You identify contrast and inconsistencies in what they are telling you. They are asking you to plan your visits, giving them warning, and wanting to control your interactions with the children. You find that you have stepped into the zone of curiosity as soon as they said, "I'll do anything." You recall your training on disguise compliance and listen actively. At this stage, you are recording and gathering information. You think to yourself, "I need to read through guidance about this again." Another example comes from the area of domestic abuse. You have police reports of the father being violent and controlling towards his partner. You visit in response to the reports. He sits across from her and is continuously maintaining eye contact with her. He always talks first. When you move the conversation to ask for her opinion, she looks at him nervously before speaking. He nods and affirms. But when she talks about arguments, he says, "This is just how all married couples are." This area of domestic abuse has a rich research base about indicators of abuse. For example, the victim waits for their partner to speak first. The victim glances at their partner each time they speak, checking their reaction. The victim smooths over any conflict. The suspected perpetrator speaks for most of the time. The suspected perpetrator sends clear signals to the victim by eye or body movements, facial expressions, or verbally to warn them. The suspected perpetrator has a range of complaints about the victim, which they do not defend. Again, we see the importance of being aware of indicators, so that we hear the triggers to curiosity. If we recap this first section about the how of professional curiosity, we used two mental models to help you think of your role. The first was stepping into a zone of curiosity. We talked about our ability to anticipate the situation you'll be facing and therefore prepare. We remind ourselves of the importance of indicators. These can trigger us when we observe them, or we can actively search out for them. The other model was like the too hot shower. Getting it just right was difficult. We said we needed to always step into curiosity. Mentally to think, "I have to be curious." The once you are there, check out if you've been curious enough and then move on. It is a little like the idea of a mental pause, or reflection in the moment of action. We considered the application of this in two areas in particular. These were disguise compliance and domestic abuse. We identified the way indicators help us tune into some of the discomforts and unease of professional curiosity. In the next presentation, we'll continue to look at more examples of how in other areas.